In this video, we'll be going over how to comp a property for your client. So comping a property is just simply getting the best valuation that you possibly can from the information that you're finding on the MLS. And you would want to do this, prior to writing an offer for the most part, as well as if you have a client that's interested in listing their property, they're most likely going to be asking what, a professional valuation of this property would be. So when we go over this in the video, just know that, every comping is going to be slightly different until you do, a bunch of them. Then it becomes a little bit easier to understand and comprehend. But a lot of the things that we're going to be using are the same tools that you're going to be using when searching for a property or when setting your client up for automatic searches. It's going to be like that same process with just a few steps and nuances. So I'll be going over those different steps as well as how to interpret some of the data. So at the top, we're going to go to residential or multifamily if that's what you're going to be in, or checking, residential rentals if you're doing something for a rental property. But we're just going to be assuming that we're doing, standard property. And again, it brings us to the same information page, which you should be familiar with at this point. If you're watching this video, hopefully you do have a client that's looking to write up an offer, you have a listing. If you're looking through these videos and you're watching ahead, it might be a good idea to, use the MLS a little bit more and get a little bit more comfortable with it if you haven't done so already. But you don't have to watch these in any particular order to understand this one. So on the left-hand side, we have active coming soon, and attorney review, which are all good, properties when we're looking to, find out what's currently on the market to then send over to our client. But we're not doing that in this case. We're trying to find out the valuation. The way to do that is to go back to the properties that have already closed and see, what's closed in the past. And it might be a good idea as well to see what else is currently on the market. So if you do know what's currently on the market, that could be, showing you what your competition is, how long those properties have been on the market, the condition of those properties. So I'm not saying don't look at the properties that are currently active, but when it comes to valuation, you always want to look at the properties that have closed. Looking at what's currently on the market will give you a little bit of a snapshot of what you should be telling your client. If you're looking to put in an offer, there's no other properties available in this market, and after you've done the valuation, you realize that, hey, this property that we want to put an offer in is extremely fair. So you might want to relay that information over to your client. Be like, listen, there's no other properties on the market. I did a valuation. The property is listed for what it should be. We really need to jump on this property. That would be the reason why you want to see what else is active. And in this situation where you're listing a property, you definitely want to come armed with the knowledge of what other listings are available in that area, like what you're going up against and like the marketing that those properties are using. It also, just helps to see what the absorption rate is in that community, which is just that community and how many properties sell per month on average for that community, which is, valuable information to be able to provide to your clients. So we're just doing the first basic step of actually just looking at what has, sold in the past. And the first step is clicking on closed, which automatically goes from 0 to the past 180 days. So approximately 6 months. So that's the standard. You can go back as far as a year if there's not, a ton of properties on the market. But realistically, we should be going back 180 days if possible, because that's really what appraisers are going to use when they're doing valuations. They typically don't go back past 6 months. So you shouldn't really either. You can if there's not that many properties that have sold, like if you only have 2 properties that have sold in the past 2 months within a specific area, and we'll definitely get into that, then maybe you want to, increase to 365, but you typically don't want to even go past 365. There should be no instance where you're looking back further than a year to do a valuation. So we have checked off is closed. That's all we're going to need for right now. Now, if you're doing more of a broad search, for a property, you can go ahead and fill in the area, subdivision, like a section, like you would if you're looking for a property for your client. If you have a particular property that you're looking at and you want like a specific close radius, you can always put it into the map search section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the property that we've used in the past, 23 Gold Street, Edison, New Jersey. And you want to put the entire address in there, and I'll say, do you mean this? You click it, and then yes. So this automatically sets you up with a radius of 0.25, so quarter mile around the property. That's going to give you your best results of what's sold close to that property. So since this property is in Edison, if we didn't put the address in and we just put Edison as the area for the property, there could be certain sections that are, close to, a different part of town that might affect the valuations greatly, which happens a lot with different towns. So if you're looking to do the valuation for, let's say, 23 Gold Street, you're going to get the best data from like the properties that have sold as close to that as possible. Obviously, if something's sold on Gold Street, that is like the best information you can get in terms of valuation because that's directly on that street. If it's a street over or a block over or what have you, that's also going to be good information. There usually isn't too much deviation in that case, but you could always be on that street that's next to the school. You could be on that street that's next to the main road. There's a ton of traffic, and that can affect the valuation as well. So just know what you're looking at. You could always Google Maps it to see if there's any particular structures that are around that property. That would be a good idea as well. But we're just doing a simple video here. So 23 Gold Street, within 0.25 miles. And we didn't put any filters in here yet. I just want to see, what the results are, since my face is actually blocking the matches. Okay, so we have 10 matches, which is good. That should be enough to be able to go off of. But we don't know, if you have 4 or 5 comps for a property, that's great. Not all 10 of these are going to be, comparable to the property that we're using right now. You can see like a different price range going from 260 all the way to 400,000. That simply is just way too big of a price range for it to be, comparable. You have the bedrooms over here, so all are 3 bedrooms and a few are 4 bedrooms, which means they're somewhat comparable. Bathrooms go from 1.5 to 2.5 bathrooms at max. Driveway, that varies. Garage varies. Basements vary whether or not it's going to be finished or whether it's just full. And all in these properties, like, looks like the days on market average from as quickly as 4 days on the market to as long as 43 and 98. So we're just going to go back to the criteria, because I know this particular property that we're comping out is a true 3-bedroom. So obviously, the more information we put in here, the better that we actually know that the comps are going to be. So I also know that this particular section, subdivision, is Clara Barton. And we'll see over here, all these sections are Clara Barton as well. So I don't need to put that in. But if you wanted to, the section subdivision and whatnot, you could put Clara Barton. And by all means, if you do know that, then you should be putting it in there, because within a quarter mile of this particular part of town, I know we're actually close to Ford's. So that's a completely different town. And I know that a quarter mile is not really going to pick up on that. But if you are on the edge of a town, you definitely want to be able to do that, because school districts can, sway the valuations of the properties. The different tax rates will sway the valuations of the property. So, you definitely want to put in Clara Barton. Since we do have other properties as well, you'd want to put in Edison. It's not necessary for this comp within a quarter mile because there's no other towns popping up. But I'm just saying for future use, if you're in a section that is close to another town, you definitely want to have as much information filled out as possible. Zip code, definitely if you know it. Bathrooms, I know we have at least 2 full bathrooms. So I'm going to do 2 full plus. Or I'll do, I'll do total bathrooms 1.5 plus. Because I know we have 2 bedrooms I mean, two full bathrooms, one half bathroom. I know a lot of properties in this market don't have that. This is actually a reno property. So we completely renovated the property and added a bathroom. And I know that that's not typical for this area. So I want to kind of see everything that's on the market. Again, this is just an instructional video, so we won't go through everything, but I know that the basement, yes, we have a basement. It's actually a full basement. Dining room, yes, we have a dining room. But I don't want to go through too much of this. So go to results. We actually have two properties. We could go back further. We could go to the past 360 if we needed to, but I think that gives it a good snapshot of what the property is worth anyway, just because I know that that's roughly around where the property is worth. So going back over the past 365 days, there's been 3 properties, which I think is enough to go off of, as long as all these properties are somewhat similar, which I already know because when I did comp these properties are the ones that came up. We listed our property a little bit higher because we actually had a 2-car garage and we have a finished attic, which none of these properties ended up having. I had a client that was very particular about wanting to, test what the market value was. So we priced it $20,000 higher than the highest sale in the complex in the Clara Barton section, which was $399,900. And we ended up getting an offer about $10,000 over this offer right here. So we found an offer fairly quickly for it. And it shows the distance first. And again, we can click all these. We can print these out. We can do whatever we need to do. But we'll go through the listings and go over the relevant information. But the MLS numbers, the pictures are here. The prices for the home. The status is that they actually closed. The area, Edison, address, subdivision, the type of property it was. Now, I know that our property was a 2-story. And this particular property is a ranch, so that one's going to be a little bit different. So I'm glad that we have these at least two stories, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. The ranch actually has 2 full bathrooms. So I know my property has 2.5 baths, so we were beating that as well in terms of what's available for comps. They have driveways. The one that sold for $380,000 didn't have a garage, so we had a 2-car detached garage. I know that is going to affect the value as well. It's going to all come down to how renovated these other properties were or are. So going through the first one, you definitely want to go through these different properties and look through the pictures. This property I already knew was renovated quite nicely. They did the exterior of the property, so they put up new siding as well. We did the same finishes that they did pretty much, except we didn't put new siding and we didn't put a new roof. So that definitely made this property worth a little bit more. But because they didn't have the 2-car detached garage and they only had 1 on this particular one, and they only had 1.5 bathrooms versus our 2.5, and we actually had a fully finished basement versus their full basement. So their basement didn't have anything in it except storage space. I knew that our property was definitely worth more than this one, even though they had the different, different siding and the new roof. So you can read through these MLS sheets and compare it to the property that you're looking to compare it to. This could be anything that you want to go off of, but the main factors for valuing a property are going to be, bedroom size, making sure, not bedroom size, but the amount of bedrooms. Bedrooms can affect the value of a property pretty significantly. If this was a 3-bedroom and we were comparing to a 4-bedroom, I typically say, and you really want to be able to analyze the properties that are on the market. That's why exploring the MLS, searching at the different price ranges, the more that you look at what's closed in the area over the past year, you're actually going to get a good idea of what a 4-bedroom should sell for versus a 3-bedroom, depending on square footage and whatnot. I typically say it's between 10, 15% price difference from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, assuming that the 4-bedroom has more square footage. Obviously, you'll find some properties where they squeeze an extra bedroom in. It takes away from the living space, takes away from the other bedroom sizes. So just adding another bedroom doesn't mean that you're increasing the value of the property by that 10 to 15%. It's only if it's scalable, and that extra 4-bedroom actually gets you more space and you have more space as a result. So yeah, you can definitely look through these and just make sure that it's actually comparable to yours. So as we were saying before, bedroom sizes make a huge difference. Bathrooms as well. Bathrooms can be the difference of 5 to 10% for like full bathrooms. Half bathrooms usually add about 5% value on average. It's if it's above what else is in the comp. So if there's typically 1.5 bathrooms and you have a 2.5 bath and it's the difference of an extra full bathroom, that probably is going to add $5,000 to $10,000 in value from whenever you're watching this video. Obviously, you want to go through the MLS and verify that. And the more that you expand on the price range, like if we, this is the upper limit for this this town in this section, because we didn't put a price limit. We could have capped it out at 500,000 or 600,000, but within a quarter mile of this particular property, the highest selling comp was 399. And since we were like trending pretty positively in the market over the past few years, this is going to be the highest sale in the development of Clara Barton, in this section of Clara Barton for a while. So the limit is 400,000. We didn't even have to put in a price range. You definitely want to put in a price range for most things. You don't want to just click hit criteria, because it's going to give you too many options. But the more information you put in, and the closer radius you have to your property, the less you're going to have to worry about putting in the actual list price for the property. Call him back. So the other factors are, the bedrooms, bathrooms, basements are going to affect the property greatly, and also just the finishes in general. So just looking through these pictures right here, we know that everything has been completely renovated, as well as like the description of the property. The remark says that everything's new as well, including the hot water heater, AC, furnace, everything like that. New bathrooms. So obviously, if everything's renovated, you price the property higher if the average property in the market is not renovated. But we're not going into the intricacies of how to actually comp property. We're doing just basics for this particular video. So you can go up here and check the next one. And this is a ranch, so it's roughly around 1,700 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I know that ranches can be a little bit more desirable in certain towns and certain sections. This property is bigger in square footage than the last one. So like that's just going to add value. So as we were talking about before, bedrooms and bathrooms definitely add value to a property, but square footage does as well. Square footage is huge. So this one hasn't been renovated. It was originally listed for $410, and it ended up selling for $385 with a $4,100 concession. So it really sold for about $381 or $381.05. And we'll just skim through this one and then go to the next one. Looking at this one, this is another property. This siding is actually not new. It looks like they just power washed it, and this roof looks to be a little bit newer, but like not completely brand new. And I know that because I've been to this property. So the main difference between this property and the other ones as well is this one actually has an enclosed porch, which is pretty hard to find the valuation in if your other properties didn't have enclosed porches. If at least 1 or 2 other properties did and they sold for a higher amount, you could possibly quantify it in that regard, but it's kind of hard with this particular comp. So everything's brand new in this one as well. This area is pretty popular for renovations and flips. So nice kitchen. Bedrooms are about the same size. And this is a full basement, but not finished, and no detached garages. This one was listed for $379, and it sold for $379.9. So same price that it was listed for. It got full price offer within 11 days of being on the market. So this is a really great comp as well, both the first and the third one. So we could comfortably say at least for the time that we put the property on the market, that our property should be valued a little bit higher, because I know our finishes were, on par with these. Our square footage was a little bit larger, and then we actually had the extra bathroom and extra, 2-car detached garage. So that's definitely going to be the main factors in this case. We went back to the criteria. I'll just go to results again. We could then, you could go back to the results page or the list, or we could just check these off right here. Is if we said, maybe we'll leave out this one for right now, but if we were emailing these over to our client, then we could just go down to the bottom, hit email, and go through the process of actually sending these properties to our client so that they know the valuation. You put the subject line of, comparables for 23 Gold Street, and just write an email of what you were able to find and just the different information that you want to be able to send over to your client. Or maybe you want to bring these over and explain it in person, in which case you can just hit the print button and bring these comps along with you to add to your listing presentation so that you can sound knowledgeable and so that you are knowledgeable on your listing appointment. But that's just going to wrap it up for today. It's a pretty just basic outline of how you would go and do valuations. Each valuation is going to be different from town to town. Even parts of town are going to be different than others. But this is just a really good way to actually start, so you can start using the MLS and finding out how you use the MLS to give you valuations for these properties.